New York Giants fans, I know that people think that when I talk about these quarterback and these head coach hires that I have biases, but I really don't. I just look at them from whatever aspect I see them and then tell you what I think. But for all of the people out there who are Stefanski fans, I wanted to be able to give you a perspective from somebody who's seen his entire tenure. And so today I am happily joined by Zac Jackson, who covers the Browns for The Athletic. And we're just going to talk a little bit of Stefanski. So strap in. It should be a good conversation. I've known the guy for a while now. He's a pretty straight shooter, like your boy. I'm Coach Gene Clemons, and I have a giant issue. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of A Giant Issue. I'm Coach Gene Clemons. New York Giants on that side. That's where you get all of your New York Giants news and information. Make sure you go over there and see all of the stuff that I am cranking out. You guys know how it goes, right? During the season, I tend to be a little bit more quiet when it comes to like all of the stuff. But as the off season gets here, I tend to turn up with the content. And so I'm back. Make sure you're going over there, checking out everything. Make sure you come over here to the New York Giants on that side YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you know anytime I'm dropping. Also, make sure you're checking out, the Bit Blue Breakdown with Paul Dottino. But I know them subs start going up when I start talking that talk. So feel free to get into the chat, right? I want to hear from you. I want to hear what you have to say like you guys always do. I appreciate it, whether we agree or disagree. I try to respond in kind. I also try to meet energy, so watch your mouths in there, right? Watch your mouths. I don't want no problems. Without further ado, let me bring in my guy, Zac Jackson. Hey, Zac, I wonder, right? When you give people your name, do they just like have fun with the alliteration that comes with the Zac and the Jack? Because every time I like say your name, I get a little kick out of it. Like, Zac Jackson. The famous Jet Jackson. I keep wanting to make your name into the famous Jack Jackson, theme song.
Ever since I was a kid, a lot of people called me Zac Jack. A lot of people called me Action Jackson. So people have called me worse on Twitter when they get fired up about the Browns. But yeah, I've heard that. So I like my name. I appreciate my parents doing that. So my dad's the White Reggie Jackson. So.
The White Reggie. You know what? It's so one of my favorite things to do is to see when the name and the build of the face don't match. Right, like when you get a like a Dante, like Dante DiVincenzo was so much fun. Like White Dante was hilarious because his name Dante, obviously you thought, but then DiVincenzo, you were like, oh no, that's a white guy, and then you hear him talking, you're like, no, I don't know. And then you see him with the high fade, and you're like, okay, I see what's going on here. I know how he grew up. Like I knew what AAU team he played on for sure. Right? Like it wasn't the it was definitely the Cucumbers, right? Like it was definitely the guys that were on hardball. It wasn't the guys from the suburbs that he was playing with. So. I wanted to bring you in because there's been a lot of talk about Kevin Stefanski, especially before John Harbaugh was released. A lot of people gave Stefanski the inside track to the Giants job if he, in fact, wanted the Giants job. I came on and I said, hey, I know people love Kevin Stefanski or love the idea of Kevin Stefanski, but I had questions because outside of 2 seasons, I haven't seen any sustained anything, right? I've seen really good defensive players come through. I've seen a multitude of quarterbacks. I think that there's been some moves that just ended up being unlucky. Like I really would have loved to have seen how that season where Deshaun Watson was playing well and they were winning games, and then he gets injured, and now you're seeing the the just
Right.
parade of quarterbacks come in and out, since then. Like I would have loved to have seen what that season would have been, but the records are the records. And for Stefanski, it was coach of the year and then 2 losing seasons. And coach of the year and now 2 losing seasons. So just from your standpoint, what has it been like on the 6-year Stefanski ride?
So he got fired because it never worked with the quarterback, right? Like that's what it is, Gene. And he came in the first year, and this didn't come out really till later, but he didn't trust Baker Mayfield. He coached around it. They got a little confidence. He and Baker grew a little rapport and a little confidence in each other. And by the end of that year, they were rolling, right? The next year, Baker got hurt early. Baker wasn't the same player. Expectations had been raised by the first year, and it didn't work. After the second year, they make the all-in trade for Deshaun Watson. It never worked. They were never a fit. Deshaun wasn't available the first 11 games. He was the lost puppy when he came back, right? And then he came into that year that you mentioned, 2023. He was injured. He was up and down, mostly down. And then he found that one magical game right around midseason. It just so happened he suffered a season-ending injury. So the feather in Stefanski's cap, the best part of his resume, is that team still went on and made the playoffs. They started 5 different quarterbacks. They got Joe Flacco off of his couch. They got hot. It was a real offense that was attacking downfield, that was using the tight end, and it wasn't just running back. So Stefanski's best offenses were handing the ball to Nick Chubb, who in his prime was very special, right?
Special.
And Stefanski's offenses and teams through the years had the moments. But now that he's out, was he really just the scapegoat for the failure of the Deshaun Watson experiment and then other offensive failures? Because that's not the only place that the Browns have failed in building, or did he just fail as a head coach because they made the all-in move. He never got on the same page with the guy. Both of his last 2 years, he's an offensive head coach and a play caller who had to give up play calling duties. It just kind of went off the rails. So here, nobody is surprised that he's out after winning 8 games in 2 years, and it really looked like it was going to be 6 games in 2 years. The surprise is that he's out and he's made to be the scapegoat while the GM and the front office stay, right? But there is you said it pretty well by throwing to me to go into the details. It's a mixed bag. He's a steady guy. His good offenses have been good. There's been moments his teams have been puzzlingly bad, and there is the one trade that you can point to, but really there's a long track record of him just never clicking for more than a month with whoever's the quarterback.
So my question then becomes, why is he being touted as this, oh my gosh, I can't believe they got rid of Kevin Stefanski type of coaching move where, hey, if he gets fired, he's going to be hired in 5 minutes. Like he got the Mike Tomlin, he was getting the Mike Tomlin treatment, and from the outside. And I mean, obviously, how it goes with national media. Some of those guys are talking and they just really don't understand what's going on inside. But like, where do you think it just comes from the Coach of the Year awards and people looking at that from the far lens?
I think that's a part of it, right? Because the Browns play every Sunday at 1, so people aren't watching them every week, Gene. Like they're not. It's that. And why did he win those? Because his good teams were good, right? Because when they were in a pinch in 23, they found Flacco and they rolled. Because it was always an underdog story, because the Browns hadn't been to the playoffs in 18 years until he came in that COVID year and got them there. So the highs were high, the lows were low. And I do think people fairly or unfairly, and I lean towards fairly if I have to pick one, just view him as the scapegoat for all the reasons that the Watson trade failed. And it was injury. It was the fact that they were willing to make such a big trade on a guy they weren't sure about and who hadn't played football. It was a guy who had thrived in an offense that's completely different from Stefanski's offense. And I think it was the second game of Watson's first full year that Nick Chubb gets hurt. And Nick Chubb was the guy for the Cleveland offense for a long time. You know, Baker would tell you that. Jarvis Landry would tell you that. All these guys had their moments, but Nick Chubb is what drove that offense Kevin Stefanski's best offenses. So he's a 2-time coach of the year who has performed in adverse circumstances. And I've come to think that matters. Like if a guy is coached at the Giants, the Jets, the Raiders, the Browns, like there's something to be said for going and seeing what that guy's about. Because if he still wants to be in it, Gene, like you got to be ready for some craziness. Let's just be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you there, and I want this to be said because I know a lot of times when I say things definitively, people don't realize that there's always nuances. I tell people like the game is never just black and white. I don't think that Stefanski is a bad coach. I just wonder if Stefanski has an ability to coach anybody, right? Like, or does he need to coach his type of guys?
Yeah, it's a fair question. And, you know, after that 4th year, after that really good year with Flacco, he was forced to fire his offensive coordinator because they wanted to go to Deshaun. They had too much invested in Deshaun to not just basically say, Deshaun, we're going to build the offense in the way you want it to, right? They made a change. They forced it on him after winning the coach of the year. And they never recovered from that. And obviously Deshaun went on and played 5 or 6 mostly bad games and then missed this whole year. Like I said, I do think it's fair to say that Nick Chubb drove those good offenses. So it's a fair thought. You know, he changed his special teams coordinator. He played every card he could play in Cleveland, Gene, right? He really hit on hiring Jim Schwartz 3 years ago, but it was forced on because he held on to the previous defensive coordinator too long. He held on to the previous special teams coach too long. You know, the draft picks they gave up in the Watson trade came to bite them. They tried to stick together this year with an older offensive line. They didn't perform. Most of them ended up getting hurt. So it was a snowball thing. You know, that you're right. There's not one clear answer to that, but I think that's a fair way to look at it, is that when he got his style and he got competent quarterback play for more than a few weeks at a time, that they were able to play they want to, and they were able to have a strong level of success, especially, you know, graded on the curve for the Browns. They only won 1 playoff game, and he was home with COVID. He wasn't even there. But for the Browns to not make the playoffs for 18 years and then play three playoff games in 3 years, that was progress.
So then is, I guess the future $200 million question is Jaxson Dart is he a Stefanski style of quarterback? Like, how close is Jaxson Dart a beefed up Baker Mayfield? Is he Baker Mayfield with a rocket booster on him? Like, because they feel very similar. They're both batshit crazy. I'm just being honest. Like, I'm not even joking that they both play with a level of recklessness I don't like in my quarterback, but I love the fact that they're willing to do it. Like, if that makes sense. Like, is he just Baker Mayfield with a little stronger arm, like a little bit more giddy up in the hitch, and just needs to kind of be like, because Baker's super accurate when he's on. Like, does he just need to kind of have that? And if so, is that going to work for Stefanski?
So I know you and I have done this before, because you got about halfway through that question, and I said to myself, he's about to ask me if Jaxson Dart's a beefed up Baker Mayfield. Like, I thought that's where it was going to go. I think there's something to be said for that. You know, and obviously when his offense has been good, it is moving a little bit. It's throwing deep crossers. It's using the play action and using the tight ends, which Jaxson Dart has done. The one bit of real insight I could give you here, Gene, is that the Browns for years, and this drives some of us crazy in this regime, like they wouldn't just go to pro days. They wouldn't just do things normally, right? Like they would have their own private workouts. They'd be super secretive about everything, like over the top. Obviously, you don't come out and tell your rivals who you like in the draft, but like over the top with this stuff, right? Well, in his 6 years, I know of one pro day that Kevin Stefanski went to, and that was Jaxson Dart's. And then they worked him out. I forget if it was the day before or the day after, but he was viewed there, spent the night in Oxford, the whole deal. Got to know the family. Now, ultimately, they did not choose him. Did they think that he just wasn't right, or did they make the conscious decision that they weren't going to trade up, that they needed those 2 picks early in the second round? I think it's more the latter, but given their situation, if they really thought Jaxson Dart was the guy, I think they would have made that move. But Kevin Stefanski spent, it's fair to say, more than the usual amount of time in study on Jaxson Dart, more than the usual amount of up close time that these guys get throughout the whole process. Jaxson Dart at the Senior Bowl was coached by Kevin Stefanski's assistant head coach and special teams coach, Bubba Ventrone. Stefanski was there the whole week. You had the combine, and then you had the visit to Ole Miss in late March. So there is innate knowledge there. What exactly is the feeling, or to what level did Kevin go to bat for or against Jaxson Dart last April? Is this thing narrowed down? I don't know, but there was much more time than the usual prospects spent between this head coach and any quarterback that they were spending time on.
Do you think, because this part of it is the part that I think always dooms coaches, the ability to relate and or communicate with a player whose personality they might not even rock with,
Yeah.
I look at the situation between Stefanski and Shedeur Sanders, right? And the way in which he went about how he talked about Shedeur until it was, ain't nobody else, boss, everybody's hurt, right? We're going to roll with you because we've got no other choice to. And then you started seeing like the way in which he talked about him change a little bit, but even then it took a couple of weeks. Is this a situation where he just didn't want to hitch his wagon to Shedeur, and that's why he tried to play both sides of it? Like, hey, I'm doing what I got to do because I don't have any other choice, but I ain't really rocking with this dude. Or is that just his personality?
Glad to fully answer that for you, but I think the best answer would become if I back up and go to Baker Mayfield and Stefanski. Okay. Because they didn't get along. They didn't. And ultimately, the Browns never even get in the room to give Deshaun the choice to tell him no before they come back with the guarantee if they don't put the full court press on, right? And they don't get to that point if they wanted to just sign Baker, who'd been in their building. So that goes back many years, Gene, but that's a process of learning how to deal with guys who are different. I would tell you in general, and in many examples, Kevin put the player first. Kevin never put business out in the public. Kevin tried like crazy to make things work behind the scenes. Baker blew him up once, going public with something that had happened, and Kevin was pissed. And Kevin learned a lesson from that some guys who are headstrong, you just have to be there every time. You can't give them a chance to go behind your back and blow you up, right? So in that regard, he has experience with it, and he has 6 years of experience with it. He's a steady guy who puts his players first, and I think was fairly popular, specifically for a locker room that only won 8 games in 2 years. I think he graded on that scale. He was very popular. Now, when it comes to Shedeur, how it worked out is not how anybody intended for it to work out, right? And you are exactly right that he would not say his name in front of the microphone sometimes, but I think that was mostly because he wanted to leave the focus on other guys. You are exactly right that there were days that Shedeur was throwing to the ball boy or not getting any real reps in practice, but that's because he was fourth in line, and that's a situation that other people chose, right? And like, just because he was the most famous number 4 quarterback in the history of the world, and more talented than almost every other number 4 quarterback in the history of the world, like, there are days of training camp and the dog days that he just wasn't going to be treated differently. And every time he got a little momentum in that camp, he got hurt and never got to build on it. Right. So some of it is fair criticism of Kevin and how he handled it, and some of it is how it worked out. And then Kevin really got caught looking silly when he had to go in a game and he never got one single practice rep. Right. Because that's what always bothered me more than anything else. So I'm glad to answer anything else on that for you about what happened. But I think the overarching answer to how it applies to him potentially getting in this situation is he's been in it. He's done it. He's coached guys who are highly touted draft picks. He's coached guys in emergency situations. He has a whole folder now of experience of how to deal with personalities. Miles was a problem, right? Baker was a problem. Odell was a problem. They didn't all work in certain ways, but like, the guy's done it. And I always say this about Kevin Stefanski. Like, when you become head coach of the Browns, you get one fire suit, one helmet, one hose, and you got like 9 damn fires all the time, Gene. Kevin is very steady. If you got 2 fires, he's the man you call. He's going to be polite. He's going to be direct. He's going to put those out. You got 9 fires. You need somebody to fire up everybody else. I'm not sure, he's the guy. So he has been through chaos before. He has been through a lot of quarterbacks. If that means something, then I totally understand why the Giants would view him possibly as their number 2 choice.
I tend to believe that head coaches, when given a second opportunity, perform better, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when it's a different, hey, I got another chance at this. I'm going to do things differently that I think I may have done before. Part of the arrogance of coaching is the my way or the highway type of mentality that coaches will take sometimes.
Yeah.
A dictator-like feel, because you almost have to, right? Like it almost has to be an iron fist. You can't just let people go all kind of willy-nilly ways. So that works itself out. But when you reset and you have in a new place, now you can make all of the changes that you may have wanted to make, but you didn't want to look wishy-washy, right? How I think this part, and I know a lot of people haven't talked about it, this part is the part that intrigues me a lot. If he goes to New York, he not only inherits Jaxson Dart, but he inherits Jameis Winston as well, who like is fun and all that other stuff, but is low-key really, really smart when it comes to this football stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure he still knows the Browns offense, right?
Yeah, and he succeeded in that offense for a short amount of time, for sure. So,
as a mentor, having to teach a new young quarterback an offense where he doesn't have to necessarily have his finger on the guy the entire time, because maybe it might be a clash of personalities or styles or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He can kind of push, hey, Jameis, go talk to the youngin.
Yeah, Kevin coached a lot of quarterbacks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he has this quarterback background. So what went on in Cleveland was odd, but like that was, he was in Minnesota for a long time, and they had different guys, things like that. That's an interesting one I didn't really think about. I totally agree with you that most times guys are better the second time around. And I think the fact that Kevin took this Giants interview like 3 days after the Browns got fired, I was in the belief that he would only get back in if it was the right situation. But he's done multiple interviews. He wants to be back in. Obviously with all these openings, he's in line to get a chance. We will see how this next wave of interviews go. But I think he's a very thoughtful guy. I know that he will consciously be different in some of the ways that he approaches things when his second chance comes and how it goes. And I would think, I don't know this, but this is me talking, obviously. I would think that his focus will be on, I got to get it right with the quarterback, and I got to do a better job of developing quarterbacks, whether it's a talented guy who's already played like Jaxson Dart, or it's some 5th rounder they bring in, right, to just bring along, because that's where he failed in Cleveland the most, and in the highest profile way, regardless of what level of blame he actually takes for Watson's failures.
Yeah, because I think it's interesting that people, and you've actually used the word a couple times, scapegoat. And like sometimes I'm down with the scapegoat thing, right? Like I think that there are times where someone can be blamed for, hey, you didn't really do this, but you got to fall on a sword for it, right?
Yeah.
And in this case, the GM and probably ownership, most likely ownership, were all in on the Deshaun Watson trade. It was a mess, right?
Mm-hmm.
It ended up being a mess. There are also a lot of good things that the GM's done, right? There's a lot of pieces in place. Like that Browns job is not like a, oh my God, you got to take over that type of job.
Right. Better than the Jets and Raiders for sure.
It's a much better situation than the Jets. It's a much better situation than the Raiders. It's in a way I look at it like, is it better than Arizona? Like outside of maybe living in Arizona, like I'd probably take the Browns job over Arizona. So like there were things that were done. My problem is if you are the head coach and you're going to run through, what was it, three different offensive coordinators? Four?
Three because it was 3 the last 3 years.
Yeah. If you're going to run through 3 offensive coordinators in 3 years and you're an offensive guy, to me, that's a problem. Is it a like, because if he's making those decisions about who should be the guy, does he have an eye for talent when it comes to coaching?
So I'll start by saying that I myself have wrestled with the scapegoat word and whether that really applies here. I think when you just look at it simply, that the way it went down where Stefanski's out and the GM gets to stay, when the construction of the offense was a way bigger problem than the coaching, then that's the word I choose. If you go deeper, Gene, I don't know that is. And this is not to defend him, but I think if you look at it, it's 3-3. First of all, the first one wasn't his fault. He called the plays. He and Alex Van Pelt got along. He was forced to make that change. They brought in Ken Dorsey, whose philosophy was completely different. Watson played horribly from start to finish, got hurt. It just never worked. The receiving core was bad, and they finally, when Dorsey called the plays and Jameis got in there, they finally got some things going in the vertical passing game, and they had 3 really good games. But those are the only 3 good games they had all year long. So this year they make the change. They promote Tommy Rees. It wasn't until desperation set in that they made the play caller change, but they had 8 different starting offensive line groups. They had their starting running back miss all of training camp. They had arguably the worst wide receiver situation in the league. And they played 2 rookie quarterbacks, one on no notice and one who had no chance. So so at some level he does feel the blame. He takes the blame. He deserves the blame. We knew he was going to get fired because they didn't win. We just thought they were both going to get fired. And certainly in many areas, if you lay it out to a wider prospect, his inability to develop, stick with, and get in that rhythm with a quarterback in terms of distributing the ball, in terms of calling plays, in terms of really building on what you're good at and what you're not, improving it, that just didn't happen. And so that's why we knew he was out. And what else went into it? What level of blame does he deserve for Baker or for Deshaun or for anyone else? I don't know. I think Shedeur ended up speaking highly of him publicly. I think he could have, in some areas, if he'd have just handled things differently publicly with Shedeur, and said he's our redshirt quarterback. It didn't come true, but I think if he would have said that instead of falsely acting like there was some chance that there was a 4-man open competition, it might have been viewed differently, but we don't know. Season went a certain way. And he started 5 quarterbacks in 23 and 4 quarterbacks in 24 and 3 quarterbacks in 25. And that's the biggest reason he's fired.
That's a crazy stat when you just use that one alone.
Well, let me tell you this one that I dug up. So Shedeur comes in, he's number 42 since 1999, right? That's when the Browns came back to the league. When the Ravens hired Harbaugh, the Browns were only on number 10. So 32 quarterbacks in 17 years.
Wow.
Starting quarterbacks. There's other guys that have played that didn't start. There's other guys that have had to get in, that are there for like a week.
That just got out there, and hey, go take that snap. I'll get you out of here on this on these things. First off, who's responsible for telling the world that Dylan Gabriel is a better quarterback than Shedeur Sanders?
The analytic charting project that they use as part of their research is I believe, the answer. I think that they got the idea that Dylan Gabriel had a chance to succeed in this league. They used data to back up that idea. They were impressed with Dylan's demeanor, which Dylan is one of the most impressive kids I've ever seen, Gene. He's just not good enough to play in the NFL.
Yeah, no, he's a great – I've met him before. He's a great dude.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. No, he's phenomenal.
I think he'd be a great coach one day.
Oh, he is going to be either going to be a top level coach or top level announcer. Because the dude is like an encyclopedia, says the right things, processes the right things. He just doesn't have the ability. So I believe that because they've used this model before. Mm-hmm. Whatever goes into it, I don't know. They're top secretive with it, but they convinced themselves that they were getting a bargain in 94 rather than a disaster. And that they weren't going to go there on Tyler Shuck because he was older and they had questions. Whether they weren't going to go there on Dart or didn't get the chance to go there, we'll probably never know. But yeah, to take Dylan and then to undercut both of them by taking Shador 50 picks later. It's absurd. And it still lingers because you can't bring them both back next year.
You can't bring them both back unless you're committed to one of them.
Unless you're committed to one, and then right.
Yeah,
and then
right?
I guess
like you can develop both of them and say, hey, listen, one of you is the starter, one of you is the backup, and when your contract's up, hey, go if you want to go make some money somewhere else. But
you're right.
Want you here.
You're not totally wrong, but you can't have your quarterback room be Shador Sanders, Deshaun Watson, and Dylan Gabriel. Like, it's just gonna be weird. Like, there's gonna be no clear-cut starter for one, and just the dynamics. Like, it's just gonna be weird. But that's the situation they're in right now. We'll see.
It would be weird to me if they go in like that, but I also just think that if they really and truly believed that Dylan Sampson was, if they really
Dylan Gabriel.
Dylan Gabriel.
They also drafted Dylan Sampson.
I know Dylan Sampson, the running back. By the way, that running back tandem, when they get healthy, boy, I like it over there.
Sampson's small, but he's got some shake to him for sure.
He's got some shake. He's got some burst. I've always loved Judkins. Like, he's my kind of dude. But can Kevin Stefanski, do you believe that he has the ability to take a Jaxson Dart to the next level?
There's no proof that he does. I answer it as simply as that, right? I do believe that he has the ability to build an offense that will allow Jaxson Dart to make necessary strides going forward, right? Which every quarterback has to do. I do believe he knows Jaxson Dart, like I mentioned, from the extensive study before and even the little bit of extra time. But on his Cleveland Browns resume, there's not anything that says he would take that guy to the next level. So if he gets the chance to, can it be different? Sure. But I can't, nothing I saw tells me that he would, because it didn't happen here.
Got you. I look for whatever is the positive quality for a guy to come in. I do give him credit for the 2 years that he was able to get things working. I do love what you said about him, going to see Jaxson Dart in person, and that's just not what he's done. So maybe there's a belief. Maybe that's why he was so quick to be on this job. Then there may be some other jobs, because he wanted the opportunity to work with that guy.
It's a coveted job, right? It's not Baltimore, but it's got to be the next most coveted job, right?
It gives me hella pause to hear you say,
Well, look, I've covered a down franchise for a long time, right? And you do start to believe that it's never going to get fixed, but that's not true, right? Like, you are 2 good drafts away. You are like transformational players away from doing it. And then the little details, which comes with the coaching staff and comes with drafting guys with character and guys who put football first, like, you can turn it. Now, sustaining it's a different story, but Kevin Stefanski turned the Browns, right? And Kevin is a low-key guy. Kevin is cool as shit. Dude's dude. He didn't want to be himself in front of the microphone, and that was his choice. But Gene, he came in. It was COVID. It was Cleveland, a place he'd never been before. He's a Philly guy who had spent his whole career in Minnesota. And after they had success and he won Coach of the Year, the last thing he was going to do is start putting himself out there like he did it, right? Like, he went out of his way to be even more low-key than he was before. So that's a question about New York that's totally different than Jaxson. It's totally outside of Jaxson Dart and Brian Burns in the NFC East and where they are and all those things. So that's an interesting thing. But like, that's what he did. He wanted to be completely low key, and we laughed our butts off because he would never answer a simple question. In the last Friday of the season, when he knew he was getting fired and we knew he was getting fired, all of a sudden he went and told a story about his relationship with David Njoku. And just like person to person, getting along, overcoming misconceptions, talking about where they stood with each other, things that coaches have to do all the time, that he acted like was like talking about some toxic chemical for 6 years. All of a sudden he was like, let me tell you how this went. And
David Njoku thought I didn't like him.
Yes.
And
it's like, man, just do that.
The truth.
Right.
Just
do that.
That's why I think that's one of those things I think a coach can really get right in their second tenure, right? Like in their second term. Just say what needs to be said, not because you're like, don't try to be Bill Belichick.
Right.
I think, like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, let me say it like this. Whether I'm sitting where I sit during these press conferences or to coach on the podium, I don't think any of us like, Gene, that every single one, every single question, every single answer now can get blasted out to the world, right? But the reality is that it can. So, like, that's what it is. So you just accept it and move on.
Yeah. Hey, Zach, I appreciate it. I'm sure I'm going to see you at least at the Combine again this year, right?
Yeah, I will be at the Senior Bowl in 2 weeks, and I will be at the Combine
well,
at
then
the
I'll see you at the
end of the
Senior
month.
Bowl.
Yeah.
I'll see you at the Senior Bowl. I'll see you at the Combine. Tell everybody where they can see if they're interested in some Browns and hearing more, because I'm pretty sure this isn't going to be the last time you have to talk about Kevin Stefanski and you know what's next for him. Tell everybody where they can find you.
I'm at Akron Jackson on X and on Instagram, and it's Zac Jackson and Friends podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. And I'm on The Athletic, you know, all the time. And I have a story going up tomorrow morning, I think, or maybe Wednesday, about the pluses of the Browns trying to sell their job, you know, to prospective guys, knowing that there's better jobs out there, right? At least from the outside perception. So what they got to do to sell this job to somebody as they move on from Kevin Stefanski.
That young nucleus, it's got to be a selling point, right?
That defense, yeah.
All those young dudes, like, I looked up at one point and Shedeur was out there with just a whole bunch of rookies and undrafted free agent rookies and dudes I'd never heard of on the offensive line, and Cam Robinson, who should never touch another football field. I have never seen let me take that back. The Raiders. If he was on the Raiders, he would fit right in.
Yeah.
Because he looked like the Raiders offensive line looked all season. The absolute worst offensive line I've ever seen assembled.
They gave up 10 sacks to the Browns that day. I was there. 10 sacks.
It's ugly, man. Zach, I appreciate it. As always. Look forward to seeing you in person, man. Hope your family's well. Hope everything's good.
Sounds good, buddy.
All right. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is Zac Jackson of The Athletic. Thank you once again. Him joining me, some great insights, right? Great insights on Kevin Stefanski, great insights on you know, what to expect if he's the head coach, why it didn't work out with the Browns. I know some of y'all are going to kill me because I said something about Shedeur Sanders, but I think it's important to understand how he deals with personalities. And I think it's really interesting what he said about Stefanski and his relationship with Baker Mayfield, and the fact that I think that Jaxson Dart is a Baker Mayfield-esque type of quarterback could be a big thing for Stefanski and this, you know, this relationship with the Giants. It'll all remain to be seen. But until next time, I'm Coach Gene Clemons, and I have a giant issue.